So, hello everyone. My name is Betsy Brick, and I'm the Development Director of Early Music Seattle. And I'm coming to you today from my downtown apartment. And I am so happy to be joined by one of our wonderful music education artists, Miyo Aoki. She is a recorder player who has played all over the world. She's an active teacher who has taught in the Port Townsend early music workshops and also in our public schools where she creates recorder clubs for elementary school students. So welcome, Mio.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So how have you been adjusting to these rapid fire changes we've all been experiencing with the coronavirus?
I've been adjusting okay, actually. Honestly, this is a little bit silly, but honestly, it's been nice to have a little bit of a break. I feel like my life is sort of, I don't know, it feels like there's just nonstop stuff going on all the time. And I feel like I'm always patching things together with different projects. And in the last couple of years, I've had a little bit of a hard time keeping on top of everything and just trying to stay ahead of it all. So in some ways, even though it's been very disappointing to lose some projects that have been canceled, it's also been really nice to just suddenly have a break.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize how much I needed a break. But I'm finding it's nice to just be able to be at home and not have to really worry about getting the next thing ready by next week while I'm also trying to get 5 other things ready for the weeks after that, and then remembering that I had something due tomorrow that I needed to finish up. So that's been nice. So it has been a big adjustment, of course, to being home all the time.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's been okay.
Good. Yeah, it's amazing how we don't realize we're running 100 miles an hour with our hair on fire sometimes. You know?
Exactly.
Until we stop, and then we realize, oh, we can put this out, you know?
Yeah.
We don't have to be doing this all the time.
Exactly.
It's a nice realization. I think it is one of the silver linings we've seen with this, for sure. And
definitely. Yeah. Well, and it's also been nice to just sort of take a step back and see that there are a lot of projects, and a lot of them I care a lot about, but then also realizing that there are some other projects that I've kind of put on the back burner because they're my own personal projects, and now I can kind of bring them back to the front of what I'm doing because I have the time to do that, and sort of realizing that maybe in the future when everything starts back up, maybe I need to be a little bit more picky about what I take so that I really am focusing on some of the projects that I care a lot about.
Wow, that sounds like a really valuable insight for all of us to think.
Sure.
In our own little worlds, right?
Yeah, and of course we'll see if I can remember that once everything starts up again. Probably not.
Jot it down in a journal or something.
Exactly. Which I'll then misplace.
Of course, right. That's how it works. So I'd like to touch back on this topic a little bit more later, but I would like to change our focus a bit to kind of the path that led you to early music, because I always find that's fascinating to hear about. And everybody arrives at that place at a different time and through different circumstances. So when did you first discover early music, and what about it inspired you to become a musician?
Well, so when I was a kid, I started out on piano. I was taking piano lessons. I'm not sure how old I was when I started. I was pretty young. And then I found a recorder in my parents' basement, and I knew that my mom had played a little bit of recorder. She played alto and soprano, and she had this old book that now it's this classic sort of tutor book that I would never use now to teach recorder because it's pretty outdated. But I remember her pulling that out, and she taught me a little bit in the very beginning, and then I really liked the instrument, and so she found a recorder teacher in the area, and I started taking lessons. My first teacher, her name is Mary Johnson. She's fantastic and a lovely person. And so I started taking lessons with her, and I just found that the music I was playing on recorder spoke to me a lot more than the music I was playing on piano.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing I loved about recorder was that I was playing it with other people and playing Baroque trios and Renaissance music. And I just loved the music and I loved the experience of playing with other people in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of became attached to that and then just kept playing recorder and eventually stopped playing piano in favor of recorder. Um,
Right.
so I think that's how I was introduced to early music, and I sort of stuck with the recorder because I loved the repertoire so much.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Lovely.
and then I got to college, and the college I started going to in my hometown didn't have an early music program, and I did a year there, kind of not sure what I wanted to do. And when I realized I wanted to study music, and I asked if I could just do sort of a music history degree, I was told at that school that I would not be able to join the program because I didn't play a real instrument.
Oh,
So that was very
oh,
interesting.
mm.
Exactly. So
Right.
so that was my first exposure to this sort of um, stereotype of the recorder as a toy or just a children's instrument. But I was luckily able to, with the support of my parents and my recorder teacher, find a program
Oh, wonderful.
to actually study it. And so then I was really exposed to early music when I went to college. So it was actually in some ways kind of late for me,
Okay.
but
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was when I was really exposed to a lot more of it. And again, I loved the music and I loved playing in ensemble situations.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. So, how does one go about pursuing a career in early music?
Uh, very foolishly. No. um, well, I mean, I think in some ways, I think now there are a lot more opportunities. I know that for me, because I grew up in a place that didn't have a lot of early music,
Mm-hmm.
um, I I think a lot of it was luck that we found this
Okay.
recorder teacher who knew um, where to look and what programs were out there and was able to kind of encourage me in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess so now I've sort of lost sight of the question. Were you asking why or how?
How does a person go about doing it?
How? There are probably a lot of different ways. I mean, I think that the traditional way really is to just, you start studying some instrument, you kind of find a repertoire that you really like. And if it's early music, then you kind of start pursuing that. And then the traditional way is really, you go to college and you realize that this is something that you really care about doing.
Mhm.
So in some ways, it almost feels like you don't have a choice. You care about it so much that you sort of pursue it as a career.
Mhm.
And looking back, I sort of think that, um, when you're in your 20s, your early 20s, you think whatever you really care about is going to be your career. So you keep pursuing that, even if later you might find it's a difficult thing to do as a career. So I think it is a lot of just pursuing it and finding opportunities and
Yeah,
looking for education.
right, right. And then it sort of becomes a different kaleidoscope of different activities that, allow you to express that passion in different ways, I would imagine.
Yes, exactly. I like that word actually. Kaleidoscope describes it very well because it is a lot of different things. Um, and it sort of feels like a juggling act all the
Mm.
time.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things. It's been nice to have a little break from that.
Yeah,
But it is also one of the things that I like about it. I like that I'm not just teaching all the time or
right.
I'm not performing all the time. I'm doing a little bit of both. And all of the performing and teaching opportunities are just vastly different from one project to the next. So
Sure.
it's always interesting. There's always something new to do and always sort of a new skill to acquire. Um, on the other side of that is that it always feels like the perfect number of recorders to have is one more than the number that I already have. So, so that can be hard. It feels like, or there's always one more skill that I need to acquire
Right.
to really compete.
Right, sure. But of course, that keeps it fresh for you too.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And challenging you in it sounds like a balanced way.
Yes,
A little on edge, but it's always nice to be able to push ourselves just a little bit when we need to sometimes.
definitely. Yeah.
So there are a lot of schools of thought around what early music actually is. How would you define it?
I've been thinking about that a lot. And actually, it's something that I come back to all the time. And I've had a really hard time thinking of how I would define it. My husband and I were talking about this, and he articulated it in a really nice way. He kind of brought together our thoughts and articulated it well. He said that he thought of early music as, or the way that we play it right now, it's music that we have that sort of lost its continuity of performance. So at some point it stopped being performed, and it's the music that we are now bringing back. There was a gap in the performance, and now we're bringing it back. So it's excluding the music that has this continuity of performance, music that's been performed since its original conception.
Right.
That would be excluded from the definition of early music. So I think that's one way of thinking of it. But what's really interesting, and what he and I were talking about, was that that's sort of originally how early music would have been defined, in my opinion. But now we have several decades of early music, the early music revival, basically.
Right.
And so now we not only have all of these sources and can read about it and try to figure out how it would have been played and look at iconography and recreate these instruments that are as close as possible to the originals. So we not only have that, but we also have this history in the modern era of early music performance and performance practice and historically informed performance, all of these terms.
Right.
So we have this interesting tradition in our own time that we're strongly influenced by. Obviously, we imitate our teachers and other performers that we respect. So it's just interesting to me to think about that and how the definition of early music has changed a lot, probably since the early music revival, the original early music revival.
Right.
And then also just thinking about what is it today? I guess what I associate early music with is a Western tradition from Europe, mainly from before the mid 18th century. So that's what I associate it with. But at the same time, when I think about it, I don't know why it couldn't include traditions from other parts of the world.
Yes.
So in some ways, I almost think that we actually just need to change the terminology and be a little bit more specific. So instead of saying I play early music, maybe I would say I play Renaissance and Baroque music from Europe.
Yeah, or world music.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I've been thinking about that term too, world music, that encompasses so much. And I think that also we sometimes have associations with the term world music to mean anything which is not Western music.
Right.
So I've been thinking about that too, and wondering if maybe we should also try to be more specific. Instead of using the term world music, maybe saying this is Chinese music from a certain time period.
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting to think about the terminology that we use and the world that we're living in today, and
Yes.
And also what terms someone might use who lives in the Middle East, for example. What would they call Baroque music from Europe? Would they call it early music?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to dive into that to figure out. Yeah.
So I don't know. That wasn't a very clear answer about what I think early music is, but I think it's a very complicated term now that I've really thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Kind of
probably
a loaded
changing.
question. I mean, because I think it's something that Early Music Seattle is really in the process of redefining.
Sure.
And, and it's been kind of an exciting journey and evolution that we've been going through. And we're definitely in the midst of it right now.
Yeah.
So what we've been talking about is some of the things we are definitely bringing into our programs, and it's exciting because I think
Yeah.
it's sort of the next evolution for early music, maybe.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. Well, and I also, something that I think is really interesting about that too is to see how when an organization starts to kind of rethink what early music means or what some
Mhm.
term means.
Mhm.
And to notice often there's a lot of pushback from some people.
Oh yeah.
And I can tell in myself thinking, but early music is Western European, Baroque and Renaissance and medieval, because that's just how we've defined early music. And so it's interesting to see in myself, why do I think that? And then sort of challenging myself to think about whether that's actually true. Should it really encompass that, or should we be looking at other types of music, especially because clearly there are links between
Yeah.
other music from other parts of the world at that time. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So, in your opinion, what role does music play in our world and community, and how has the pandemic brought attention to the importance of the role it serves?
well, I think it serves a lot of different roles. I mean, one thing I see a lot of because of the teaching work that I do, um, I think it does really bring communities together, and it gives people an activity to do that's very community oriented. And I don't know, there's some kind of connection I think that people can get from playing music together.
Mm-hmm.
And also not only just playing music together, but sort of working to better themselves and better their ensemble together. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important for our mental well-being and our emotional well-being and our just connection to other people.
Yes.
Um, I also think, of course, that music does amazing things for our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's extremely important for kids to get music in their education.
Yes.
And not just a sort of um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not just kind of a surface. What's the word I'm looking for? Uh, it's the opposite of deep, shallow. A sort of
Oh,
shallow,
yeah.
not very thorough music education that just kind of
Mhm.
touches the surface, and where they maybe listen to some music but don't really make it themselves or
Right.
learn about different traditions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important for kids to get a good music education so that their brains develop in other ways. I think it helps them recognize patterns, which helps with math and probably reading, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Sure.
I think it's important in that way. And just for sort of expressing oneself, of
Yeah.
course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there was some meme going around about how hopefully people remember after this pandemic is over that the things that they turned to while they were in isolation were the arts,
Yeah.
literature and music and other types of art.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how do you see the presence of this virus in our world affecting the nature of live musical performances in the future? And how do we keep the music alive in times of crisis?
That's a big question.
Yes, it is. You can take your time with it. That's fine. Repeat it too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the short answer is I have no idea. I
Sure.
don't know.
That answer, Mio, for sure.
um, I hope that in the long run, things will return to a place where people can attend live concerts again. I think in the short term, it's going to be really hard because so many arts organizations need funding, and without having people attending concerts, it's going to be really hard to get that funding unless there are a lot of donations. Or unless there's some way of providing online concerts that work in a similar way where people buy tickets and I'm not really sure how that would work.
A virtual concert series.
Exactly. Yeah. And there have been a lot of live streams and other things online, but most of those are free to everyone, which is fantastic. But at the same time, that's not helping organizations stay afloat.
Right. It's keeping people connected.
It is, exactly.
Inspiring them, actually, from this gift that's being offered to donate, because the situation that the arts are in, that's become very, very apparent. Through these different weeks, and different organizations are speaking out, to the fact that it's happening. And I think we're at the tip of the iceberg as to what we're going to discover. It's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds from here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I do think what I hope comes out of it in part is I hope that we'll be able to have more discussions around how musicians are paid and contracts, cancellation clauses in contracts. That's been a big topic of discussion with colleagues. Some organizations have had cancellation clauses in their contracts, and so that was pretty clear. They knew what to do. Other organizations didn't have a clause, but agreed to pay some or paid what they could. Then some people have lost money from purchasing flights that were then not reimbursed, because often that gets reimbursed later. So then if the concert is canceled, you have this flight that you essentially paid for out of your own pocket that won't be reimbursed. So you've essentially lost money on a gig if you don't get any cancellation fee. So I think that might be something that could come out of this, talking about that. And also just in the whole country, the way we're set up for a social support system for people who are freelancers. I mean, how do we get our health insurance?
Absolutely.
I'm lucky that I have a part-time job that offers me health insurance. So I'm very, very grateful that I have that. And something that's changed for me is that I had sort of been thinking that maybe eventually I could, once I'm making enough with music to support myself fully through that, then I might drop the part-time job. But now I definitely don't want to do that. Because I see how much it's supported me. And I do care about that job too quite a lot. But it'll just be interesting to me to see how our society changes and whether we make any changes in our social support system in the country.
It will be very interesting to watch. I agree with you. Yeah, it definitely has raised some interesting things that maybe have been under the radar that now are being, put in the spotlight a bit more. If they'll still stay there and that they'll be addressed instead of being put back under when
I hope so.
The normal, rhythm of things for most people gets reestablished. But so what are you looking forward to the most when we get on the other side of this crisis? Social distancing stuff, other than getting back in the schools and teaching kids, of course.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. That'll be really nice. I have not been able to figure out how to keep my recorder club going throughout this, because I don't know how many of the kids actually would have access to the internet. I think most of them do, but I'm not sure. I know a lot of them have siblings. There's probably a lot of demand for the internet in their households right now with their siblings home too. And also the way my recorder club works, because I don't want kids to just show up one time and get a recorder and then not come again. They have to sort of earn a take-home recorder. So they have a recorder in the classroom and then a recorder that they can take home. And they have to come 3 times before they can earn their take-home recorder. And some of the kids haven't earned a take-home recorder yet. They have to come 3 times in a row, I should say. So some of them have come, but like every other week, and that doesn't work. So
I got you. Yeah.
So they wouldn't even have an instrument at home to play. Yeah, and then how would I reach them, because I'm not officially a teacher at the school? I'm not sure how that access would work. Would it need to be facilitated by a teacher? Anyway, there are all kinds of questions that I would have.
Yeah,
so I'm really looking forward to that, to being able to start that up again. It may just not happen this school year. It may have to just start up in the fall again.
Right.
So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then I'm also just really looking forward to being able to play with colleagues again. It's just not, I've been working on trying out playing duets with myself, recording one live. It's just not the same.
Yeah, there will be a time we'll come back together. I know this. We make the best of this situation, like you're saying, picking up projects that maybe you hadn't had the time for before.
Yeah.
And, using that opportunity to really dive into those and see creatively what can happen. And then when, things do get lifted, then, I think we're going to have this incredible feeling of gratitude for these things that maybe we had taken for granted, and not even realized it. And I think that's the optimism I have for the arts, is that people are going to realize just how pivotal it is to, a culture's health, a community's health, to be able to have this exposure to the arts that provide hope and inspiration and, dreaming, people dreaming. And it's just, people don't realize just how much the arts infiltrate their lives in some ways until it's completely taken away, which is what has happened until all cool stuff, started showing up on the radar. But I don't see that ever replacing live music or performance. It just, it has a different energy to it. It doesn't mean it isn't inspiring and beautiful right now in the moment. I mean, I think it's salvation for a lot of people, but I mean, that's what I've come to sort of understand, is that I'm enjoying that. It's like, I'm missing that visceral experience, just having that music just come through me.
Yeah.
It's,
well, and one thing, I like that you mentioned that, because one thing that I really enjoy about performing live music is that I feel like there's this sort of back and forth between the audience and the performers, and it creates this sort of special something that happens in the moment, and you can't really create that virtually, because you just can't have that back and forth that you would have.
It's almost like some beautiful energy exchange, energy dance that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's just this beautiful, it is this beautiful back and forth of that trading of that energy, that vibration that I think we all just really resonate with. And I think it's something that we just have as just a basic human need to experience, honestly.
Yeah.
So hopefully this whole thing will highlight just the importance of that for our overall well-being.
I hope so.
It'll be interesting again to just sort of see how it all unfolds.
Yeah.
Speaking of turning to things for inspiration, is there a favorite piece of music you turn to when you just need that little bit of comfort and support during a time of challenge?
That's a good question. Well, ironically, the music that I would probably turn to the most would be English Renaissance consort music. But I find it most comforting when I am playing it with a group of people. So,
Right,
so
right.
listening to it is wonderful. But I really miss that. The solo music that I might play for comfort is pretty much always Bach.
Okay.
I, I often go back to the solo flute partita that a lot of recorder players play, and then we like to steal music from other instruments. So there's the solo flute partita, and then all kinds of other solo Bach, like the cello suites. We
Oh,
appropriate those too.
oh,
Um,
really? Oh, I had no idea.
uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, we can't play double stops, but we do our best.
The inside of recorder players, I didn't know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. We tend to steal all of this music. So,
Wow.
yeah. But I find Bach to be very, it's easy for me to kind of lose myself in the music.
Mm,
And yeah, I feel like it provides just the right sort of food for my brain. It's
mm.
not, it's not sort of a mindless piece that I can easily predict.
Okay.
It keeps me really interested, and
Oh,
it feels very meditative to me to practice a piece by Bach.
oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me this today to just talk about all these amazing topics. And it's just been really wonderful to be able to have this opportunity to be with you. And so I just wish you well with everything, with the next few days, months, weeks.
Thank you.
How they unfold.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look forward to just when you can, be back with kids doing, the magic that you do with those.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. And
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the support of all of the programs. I really appreciate it, and I'm deeply grateful.
absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Mia.
Thank you.